Part 23 of 23, There Was a Man, the Saga of Kahl, A True Story. Personal commentary by Rudy. I expect this to be the last part, and if I forget to interject this at the end, I want to remind you guys that Yori von Kahl and Scott Fall, whom my wife and I communicate with regularly, are men of the highest integrity. Both Yori von Kahl and Scott Fall are very strong in their commitment and faithfulness to the Lord Jesus Christ. They are Bible-believing Christians, and they are worthy of your letters. And I pray that if you've stuck with this book this long, that you write an encouraging letter to both Yori von Kahl, who is the son of Kahl, and Scott Fall, who both have been in prison 37 years. I also want to interject before we read the last part of this book, that if it was not for Darrell Graff and a miracle of God, we would not have this book today. It is rare and out of print, and the authors have since passed away. Joan Kahl is still alive, but this book normally goes for over $380 on Amazon.com. My wife found it in a freak incident where we picked it up for less than $40. And so we have began to read it into YouTube with the knowledge that Yori von Kahl is aware of what we're doing. So I do pray that you write Yori and Scott a letter. Let them know that you love them and have not forgotten about them. Also, before I begin the last part, there is efforts to reprint this book and to pick it up and to sell it so that you guys can have your own copy. If that happens by other people that we know, and if that actually becomes available, we'll let you guys know through our Year of Jubilee website. I do encourage you to go to Year of Jubilee. Jubilee is spelled with one E. Click on Yori and Scott's page, and we'll keep all the latest information there, as well as I highly encourage you to write them a letter directly in prison. Chapter 32, Arkansas. Additional hearings were held in Walnut Ridge on the capital murder charges against the Ginters. In these hearings or motions, many details of events at the Ginter residence came to light. As is often the case, the answering of one question generates another which remains unanswered. Adversarial procedure is a clumsy method to get at the truth. An inquiry, such as by a grand jury, is much superior, I would think. Unlike the federal case 2 months earlier, the atmosphere of the prosecutor and circuit judge was undeniably hostile to the defendants and their attorneys, Izen and Mins. Little success was achieved in obtaining favorable rulings on motions, but the hearings were useful for obtaining information excluded from the federal trial. The state had little chance of convicting the two persons of a capital offense when they were handcuffed in custody when the killings occurred. A lesser included offense conviction was probably the prosecutor's objective. For whatever reasons, including the fact that Leonard was imprisoned, Prosecutor Stallcup decided later to drop the charges against Leonard and to prosecute Norma only. This delighted Norma's attorney. Mins, because of two things, it lessened her chances of conviction, and the trial would be used to collect much-needed information on the events of June the 3rd. He and Izen planned on suing some folks. As it turned out, the court eventually dismissed the charges against Norma Ginter. This infuriated Prosecutor Stallcup, probably because he anticipated that civil actions against him would be forthcoming. They were. Citizens concerned about the deaths of two men and the conflicting and illogical reports relating to the affair began calling for a grand jury investigation of the matter. For example, officials said thousands of rounds exploded in the house, but very few shell casings were found. One of these concerned citizens Bill Wade, who owned the farm and the house which was burned. Now, Bill is accused of being a tax protester, but actually is not, believing the government has exceeded its authority in oppressing the people in many ways, misapplying the law. I've already told you how he resembled Grandpa physically. Bill is a veteran of World War II and had held leadership positions over the years in many civic veterans and farmer organizations, including acting as president of the state Cattlemen's Association. He was suspected of helping harbor Grandpa, but scant evidence was available in this regard. He organized regional and county development councils. He is respected as a layman speaker in a Methodist church. Recently, he formed a group of about 20 persons who meet to study the Constitution from time to time. He has been placed in position number 32 on the insulting list of notorious or nefarious persons publicized by the Arkansas State Police. Bill's son, Ray Wade, is 33 and is highly educated in agricultural matters. He is a 150% Arkansan, being half fox and all Razorback. His farming interests center on self-sufficient farms, emphasizing such things as small-scale energy technology and crop diversity. His picture was widely circulated holding Grandpa's severed foot. His role in the Kahl affair got him into a whole heap of trouble. He wanted a grand jury investigation. Ed Gran of Little Rock was another who was calling for a grand jury. He is a physics professor of the state university and the leader of the Central Arkansas Patriots, a group advocating a return to government in accordance with the Constitution. No grand jury was to be called. Formal requests for grand jury were sent to the U.S. Attorney and federal judges in both East and West Districts, Prosecutor Stallcup, Circuit Judge Andrew Ponder, the state Supreme Court, and Governor Clinton, to no avail. Bob Sherman of Mena asked Governor Bill Clinton at a Clinton coffee shop why he had not used the power of his office to see that a grand jury was impaneled. Since Sherman thought Ed Gran to be especially informed about the Smithville incident, he requested that Governor Clinton give Ed an audience. The governor agreed and said that Ed Gran should contact his aide for an appointment. Ed made several attempts to get an appointment through the aide, but was never granted one. After all, no grand jury had been called in Lawrence County since 1970. At that time, a judge was allegedly accused of improprieties with county assets, a finger in the pie deal. One should note that a grand jury also has an annual monitoring role, such as an auditing county property, but not if it's never convened. Now, if I've said anything that's inaccurate in this story, it is certainly not intended. Whose fault are inaccuracies? Anyway, with no grand jury to seek the truth. However, Judge Ponder, who has the principal responsibility for convening a jury in this case, saw no need of one. A small group of people formed a citizens committee to investigate the shootings and house burning. Since no grand jury was called, Ed Gran and Ray Weed were elected co-chairmen. Having no subpoena power, witnesses were invited to come forward with assurance of privacy and confidentiality. The committee has made good progress, even though with limited results. By the way, have you heard the silly rumor about the University Medical Center in Little Rock? They're going to start using lawyers instead of little mice for their experiments. It seemed that there are plenty of attorneys, and you don't get so attached to them. Chapter 33, Backlash. A newspaper, said Mark Twain, is not just for reporting the news. It is to get people mad enough to do something about it. Gene Nail, Arkansas Democrat reporter at the time, did a masterful job of investigating reporting on the two shootings and house burning. He raised a lot more questions than he answered. His notoriety perhaps cost him his job. Gene's country home is secluded and somewhat distant from the main road at the front. However, to the rear, his house is quite observable from across a road. A portable cabin suddenly appeared on the property to the rear of his property. After being occupied for a few days, it was vacated. I understand there was a windfall gain for the property owner who gave some men permission to put it there. As Euripides wrote long ago, a coward turns away while a brave man seeks danger. Ray Wade's activities irritated the Lawrence County authorities. He was the principal spokesman for the committee. He was jailed for 6 days on June the 8th, 1984, and then for 93 days, starting October the 8th, 1984, for terroristic threatening of his ex-wife, charged by prosecutor Stallcup. The state Supreme Court refused to grant his writ of habeas corpus. Associate Justice John L. Pirtle, in dissenting, reflects the pits to which Lawrence County justice has sunk in only 150 years, and the general disregard of the constitutional rights by the Supreme Court and the lower courts. I think it is a perfect example of what Grandpa had been warning about. Pirtle wrote, I disagree with the majority because I think the petitioner is entitled to relief whether by way of habeas corpus or release on his own recognizance. On June 5, 1984, the prosecuting attorney filed an information in which Ray Wade was charged with terroristic threatening. An attached affidavit executed by Jim Stallcup read as follows: I have investigated this matter and the facts justify the filing of this charge. No other affidavit or statement is in the record. A bench warrant was served on June the 8th, 1984, at which time petitioner was taken into custody and detained in the Lawrence County Jail. On June the 11th, 1984, the appellant was advised of his constitutional rights. The first advice given to the petitioner was, you have the right to remain silent. On June 12, 1984, the petitioner filed the writ of habeas corpus in the Lawrence County Circuit Court. The following day, he filed a petition to be released on his own recognizance. The same day, about 36 friends and relatives of the petitioner presented a statement in support of the petitioner's request for release on his recognizance. He was taken before Municipal Judge Harry Ponder on June 14, 1984, and was released on his own recognizance on condition that he did not disturb his wife. So far as the record revealed, nothing officially transpired in this case until October the 8th, 1984, at which time the petitioner voluntarily appeared before the Lawrence County Circuit Court, Judge Andrew Ponder presiding, for arraignment on the charge of terroristic threatening. The court informed petitioner that he would have to give spoken answers, which he refused to do. The court stated, "Can you not hear me? But you don't want to answer me? Is that what is right? Is that what it is? All right." He was placed in the sheriff's custody on the same date, and the state filed a petition, and the court entered an order on the next day committing the petitioner to the state hospital for observation for a period of not less than 30 days. He was transported to the state hospital on December the 13th, 1984. An answer to petitioner's request for habeas corpus was filed on behalf of the respondents by attorney Harry L. Ponder, Andrew's brother, on October the 19th, 1984. On or about October the 29th, 1984, petitioner and his friends commenced filing pleadings in his court. The original pleadings were subsequently filed in the Lawrence County Circuit Court and in this court. A trial of some sort was commenced in the Lawrence County Circuit Court on the first day of November 1984. On some previous date, an attorney had been appointed by the court to represent the petitioner. The first question presented to the court by the attorney was, "Your Honor, for my benefit, could the court state the grounds for Mr. Wade being in jail at present?" Response by the court was as follows: "Mr. Westerfield, you won't have to inquire. The reason I had him brought around was not at your request, but I will make myself clear." The court then explained that it had attempted to inquire of Mr. Wade about setting bond and explaining the charges on October the 8th, 1984. The court stated that since Mr. Wade would not respond, he was asked whether he could hear the questions by the court, and he nodded in the affirmative. He was placed in jail because it appeared to the court that he was not competent at the time to appear without an attorney, and the court could get no responses from him. The court went on to explain why petitioner was being held in jail by stating, "He is not being held for punishment of any sort. He's being held because they can't take him at the state hospital, and his behavior has been bizarre enough that the state felt that a defense of insanity might well be sought." The court then went on to explain that he would be inclined to let petitioner out on some sort of bond if there was an assurance that he would report to the sheriff's office when it came time to take him to the state hospital. Mr. Westerfield then informed the court that the petitioner did not desire Westerfield's assistance. Mr. Westerfield then told the court that petitioner had informed him that Ray would report back to the court at whatever time the court appointed. He was, I believe, on some sort of bond, perhaps an OR bond, from June until October, and Mr. Wade, from talking with him, has advised me that if the court tells him to be back here on December the 3rd or whenever, he will be here, whether it's for court or whether it's for transportation to the state hospital for observation. The court then inquired whether Mr. Wade wanted to tell the court that he would be back when the court told him to. The appointed attorney then asked petitioner if he would be back. The court replied, "No, Mr. Westerfield, I am not talking about from Wade to Westerfield to Stallcup to Ponder, and you want to assure this court that you will be back here whenever we want you back." No answer. All right. That concludes this hearing. Petitioner was then returned to jail. The court entered certiorari on November the 27th, 1984, but ordered the expense of the record to be paid by the petitioner. A statement of indigency was filed in this court, but it was not acted upon. The petitioner's friend paid a filing fee of $100. The clerk charged $295.55, and the court reporter $30 for the 150-page record, including the 11 pages of testimony and court proceedings. The record was lodged in this court on December the 6th, 1984. Petitioner was committed to the state hospital for observation on December the 13th, 1984. He was found without mental disease or defect and released to the Lawrence County Sheriff on December the 24th, 1984. In addition to the numerous allegations previously filed, the latest amended petition alleges that petitioner is suffering from diabetes, for which treatment is required but refused by the Lawrence County Sheriff's Department. This amended petition also points out that the petitioner was denied access to the law library and books as well as writing materials. The facts of this case are indeed unusual. Petitioner was picked up on a charge of terroristic threatening. There is no supporting factual affidavit by anyone which even attempts to describe any act of terroristic threatening. In fact, the wife, who may have been the complaining party, has filed an affidavit wherein she declares she is not afraid of the petitioner and joins in a request for his release. It has been more than 7 months since petitioner was arrested and placed in jail. He was sent to the state hospital on the motion of the state, even though there had been absolutely no hint that he would plead mental disease as a defense. To this date, the record does not show that he has entered a plea or even read the charge against him. Apparently, he is in limbo at this time. The criminal charge of terroristic threatening was filed against the petitioner many weeks after the information alleges the threat occurred. If the wife was the source of the information upon which the charge was founded, it seems the likelihood of conviction would be slim, because she has recanted if, in fact, she ever told anyone she was afraid of her husband. Judge Harry Ponder released the man on his own recognizance at the probable cause hearing. Judge Andrew Ponder apparently revoked this bond even though the accused appeared at the time and place scheduled for plea and arraignment. The reason appears that the petitioner stood upon his right to remain silent, as he had been informed he had the right to do. He was held in jail because he elected to stand upon his constitutional right to remain silent. He has been a resident of the same county for over 35 years, and a host of friends and neighbors attempted to point out to the court that the petitioner was entitled to be released upon his own recognizance. His parents agreed to cooperate in seeing that he would report as directed by the court. He suffers from a life-threatening disease for which he was allegedly denied treatment while being held in a county jail. It seems to me that the courts are being used to coerce the petitioner into talking to the judge. No reason is shown which would have prevented this prisoner from already having been tried. From the appearance of the record, the trial limit within the meaning of the Constitution is a period of time less than those enumerated in our rules of criminal procedure. Our rules set the outside limits within which a person must be tried or released. The defendant should be granted his freedom pending a fair and impartial trial at the earliest possible convenience of the court. He is entitled to be convicted or found not guilty promptly, or he is entitled to be released pending trial. The order sending petitioner for observation requires that he be kept not less than 30 days. Arkansas law requires that the period of observation not be more than 30 days. Obviously, it took the hospital far less than 30 days to determine the accused was not suffering from mental disease or disability. Petitioner did not request nor did he desire to be committed for observation. He gave no indication that he would make a defense based upon his mental condition. The effect of the commitment was to prolong his incarceration rather than to protect him. Such commitments are expensive and wasteful of the human resources of the state and should be used only when there is some clear indication that the defense of mental disease will be employed. One day in January 1985, the jailer ordered Ray to leave the jail. Strange. No writ had been granted. Perhaps a discreet phone call was made by a Supreme Court justice. They finally got around to arraigning Ray in December 1985, but instead dropped the charge at that time. One deterrent to malicious prosecution and criminal or negligent misbehavior by government officials is by suing them for damages under various laws, including the Civil Rights Act. In this way, and as defendants to various suits based on the laws they believe unconstitutional, a myriad of patriot groups use the courts to fight their battles, even though they hold a general disdain for the legal system as it exists. Patriot groups, by and large, vocally abhor violence, holding that it is something to use for self-defense only, according to media reports. A tiny percentage in this movement will sometimes take up arms to make a point. This gives the Constitutionalists a bad name. Even more serious, it has caused the Justice Department to brand the movement incorrectly as militant extremists who seek to gain their ends by force. In contrast, Patriot housewife Penny Wilson said, "I don't want Asa Hutchinson representing my dog, much less Senator." Patriots are characterized as the Christian counterpart of the Muslim Kurds of the Near East, a people with no country, though residing in 5 countries in constant armed defiance. Battles are frequent. These Kurdish wolves of freedom seek only independence from oppression, but they have no constitution to back them up, as do Christian patriots in America. Iraq recently destroyed the Kurds' university by aerial bombing. In America, destruction of personal property is a criminal act, as are other violations of inalienable rights guaranteed by the highest law of the land. Officials have all sworn to uphold the Constitution. Many fail to keep their oath. As a columnist, Sidney Harris, wrote in 1985, "Almost everyone professes to believe in freedom in the abstract, but most people are really afraid of freedom in any concrete or psychological sense and want to suppress the freedoms they do not specifically favor. Like a river steadily eroding a riverbank, we have lost our freedoms bit by bit. The small incursions on freedom are always rationalized as for some greater good, but the end result is that we have no freedoms left." According to columnist James Kilpatrick, freedom is a scary thing these days. The laws being passed currently differ from their proper function of protecting persons and property from being harmed by others to those of positive social control. Instead of prohibiting certain things like spitting on the sidewalk, laws are now compelling action. Fasten your seatbelts or buy this social insurance. To celebrate their sesquicentennial, the good people of Arkansas possibly may start sweeping with a new broom by voting themselves new faces at the top of the judicial and executive branches. At lower levels, memories of the distinguished circuit judges, such as the late Bill Lee of Clarendon, might remind them that changes may be in order at that level. A resurgence of the love for freedom may occur, causing displacement of those who oppress citizens or who prefer taxes and subsidies to the fruits of liberty, or would make a drainage ditch of Cache River. Multi-million-dollar lawsuits have been filed for some as much to gain information as to obtain damages. Norma Ginter is suing some 8 people for $52 million for $52 million in actual and punitive damages. Using attorney Mike Menz, Bill Wade is suing some 20 officials who were at the scene of the house burning pro se. He also has an attorney suing the state police for defamation of character. Art Russell is seeking damages and recovery of his stolen silver with attorney Joe Izen. Joan Kahl in Heaton is suing for task force damages to her home and personal property. Ray Wade is suing pro se Judge Andrew Ponder. Prosecutor James Stalcup, Sheriff Bob Tomlinson, Deputy Stanley Witt, Warren Williams, and Hubert Adams for $3 million collectively. A TV reporter asked Bill Wade why he bothered with the Patriot movement, which took so much of his time. He tilted his cap back, scratched his head, and looking squarely into the camera said, "Isn't freedom worth it?" Chapter 34, Goodbye. Most of Gordon's badly charred body was returned to the family in North Dakota. A request for military burial was made for the war hero to the Minot Air Force Base, which in turn coordinated with Maxwell Field in Nebraska. The request was denied, considering the circumstances. Air Force headquarters later said they knew nothing about this and were apologetic. When Dagmar Tabarsky, a teenager in Florida who had immigrated from Czechoslovakia at age 4, heard about this treatment, she was incensed. She returned the honors the Air Force had given her for winning their science fair competition. She had developed a water flea which ate raw sewage. Dagmar said, "I don't know if they're holding something out, or if they, the U.S. officials, are covering something up. Thanks to some members of nearby veterans organization, my grandpa was accorded a military funeral. A 12-year-old bravely played taps the best he could. Reverend Peter D.Y.C.K. conducted the service. The Seventh-day Adventist Church lent us its facilities for the purpose. Many people came, a lot more than the newspapers reported. I think you will appreciate what Reverend Dick has to say. The proceedings. We are gathered on this occasion to pay the tribute to a friend, a neighbor, a loved one, and to be of some consolation and solace to the immediate family. There are many things in this life here on earth that we do not understand, many mysteries we cannot understand, many wonderful things we do not understand, and certainly there are, unfortunately, many sad things in this world that we do not understand. God's people one day will understand all things perfectly by and by. 1 Corinthians 15, So when this corruptible shall put on incorruption, and this mortal shall have put on immortality, then shall be brought to pass the saying, that which is written, Death is swallowed up in victory. O death, where is thy sting? O grave, where is thy victory? The sting of death is sin, and the strength of sin is the law. But thanks be to God, which giveth us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. Therefore, my beloved brethren, be ye steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord. For as much as you know your labor is not in vain, the music of the old hymn, It is well with my soul, penetrated the stillness. Gordon W. Kahl was 63 years of age. His address was Heaton, North Dakota. He died on June the 3rd, 1983. He was born on January the 8th, 1920 on his parents' farm south of Heaton. He was a son of Frederick and Edna Kahl. He was reared on the farm and graduated from Heaton High School in the late 1930s. As a boy, he began farming with his father, remaining on the farm until 1942, when he enlisted in the Army Air Corps, serving in World War II. Following his discharge in 1945 from the Army Air Corps, he returned to North Dakota, and it was at that time he married Joan Seal on January the 6th, 1945, at Mandan. They together lived on the Kahl family farm near Heaton. He later took over the farming operation from his father, continuing to farm until retiring in the early 1970s. They since have lived in the Heaton area, spending winters in Odessa, Texas. However, Mr. Kahl was a member of the Disabled Americans Veterans, and surviving him are these family members. His wife, Joan. Sons, Yori Von Kahl of Heaton and Frederick Von Kahl of Crosby. Daughters, Linda Holder and Lorna Adkins of Odessa. Lonnie Joe Kahl of Carrington. Lorene Kahl of Heaton, and 6 grandchildren. He also has a brother, Clarence Kahl of East Grand Forks, Minnesota. Sisters Dolores Everest from Telespa, Montana. Yilva Zanius of Long Beach, California. As we all realize, the events surrounding this funeral are most unusual in nature, and I think it behooves us to have an unusual funeral. Since the circumstances, the man, and the events are of unusual nature, I would like to say that we honor this country. We teach the great American history to our youngsters. We tell them the tremendous stories of early American history, such as the story behind the Star-Spangled Banner, the flag under which so many of our men on foreign soils have fought. It is a tremendous story, heart-moving. So we love this country, and we can say that this man really loved his country and was willing to ably serve his country. I would like you to know that I did everything I could to prevent these events from occurring. 2 years ago, I succeeded in getting the current marshal at that time together with Mr. Kahl. Neighbors and friends came, and we had a very cordial meeting, which resulted in complete tranquility for the situation for 2 years. While the events were beginning to unfold on the news just last week, I was on the telephone talking to the head FBI man in Little Rock office, pleading with him to do something, even to the degree of allowing me to come down if Gordon would talk to me, just to pull back but that effort was in vain. Some have tried, and perhaps some of us have failed, but in an occasion such as this, to say nothing, I feel in my own heart, would be cowardly. So bear with me a minute, and we will talk a little bit about this man. Gordon Kahl was a very unusual man. He was different in many respects from the average American. He served his country well in the military as a gunner. He was seriously wounded at one time and returned to active duty in a flash of heroism, earning many medals and several Purple Hearts. However, on his return home, he came back to his farm and continued farming. It is then that he encountered problems with some government agencies. His problems increased and compounded over the years, leading up to the events of recent months. Perhaps the life of Gordon Kahl may be summarized under three headings. The first, that he was a controversial man. There were many who loved him and liked him, and there were also many who disagreed with him. He had, however, strong beliefs when it came to liberty and freedom. He saw his beloved nation being eroded by the enemy, and he felt he must speak up. This brought him controversy from fellow citizens, and this brought him into controversy with government agencies. To say that he was a controversial figure is really the understatement of the day. On this quiet, humble community today, we have the eyes and ears of the entire nation upon us. Second, he was a dedicated man. He served his nation under the stars and stripes with dedication, and he worked hard with dedication to seek and preserve this nation from falling into serious pitfalls of tyranny. Any other man would have been discouraged long ago in pursuing his efforts, but his dedication kept him going while many of his countrymen turned against him. Third, this man was a sacrificial man. He sacrificed everything he had for his cause. The family, along with him, sacrificed a lot of things. They paid a great price emotionally and materially in their attempt to awaken up us pacifistic public to the dangers facing these great United States of America. I want everyone to know today that I am not here because I sought to do this. I am here because Gordon on several occasions indicated that in the event something happened to him, he wanted me to take his funeral. The family also requested I fulfill his wish. You may well realize that this is not an easy duty today, but I feel in my heart that this is really what the Lord would have me do. Gordon did not ask me to do this because I believe everything he believes. He and I disagreed on a lot of things. He did not ask that I serve his family in this manner because I would necessarily champion his cause. However, the reason may be because he thought I understood him better than most in what he tried to do. So please do not feel ill of me today if I tell you in just a few words what I believe he was concerned about. I shall reach back in American history and refer to an illustration or two. Patrick Henry, the eloquent attorney of the colony of Virginia, saw a preacher of the gospel flogged publicly one day because he preached without a license. The gruesome scene made an indelible impression on Henry, and shortly afterward he rose to his feet. He rose to his feet in the Virginia Convention on March the 23rd, 1775, and addressed the convention with his famous, powerful speech. And he concluded that great address with these words: "Is life so dear or peace so sweet as to be purchased with the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God. I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death." I think I can say here today that Gordon Kahl emphatically believed that. In the preamble to the Declaration of Independence, we read these words: "Accordingly, all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. I believe I can say here today that Gordon Kahl really believed that. And he felt that by speaking up, he must resist the rising despotism that he saw in our nation. Paul Revere rode through the night and cried in a loud voice to arouse the people, saying, "The British are coming, the British are coming." But this man traveled all across this country, and in his way, and bound by his conscience, he cried, "The tyrants are coming, the tyrants are coming." Hardly anyone paid any attention to the warning. People didn't believe in a lot of his political and religious beliefs, so they discounted everything he said. Patrick Henry did not believe in all the Baptist preacher preached, but he believed with all his soul that he should be free to preach what he believed. On one occasion, he rode 50 miles on horseback to be at the trial of 3 Baptist preachers, and he immediately set those 3 men free. He stood in their behalf. So that's how devoted this man was. He believed that men ought to be free. We may sharply disagree on many things that this man believed, and I am sure that many people do, and many people disagree with what he did. But should he not have the privilege of free speech? Should he not have the privilege of free speech, just like the press? It is a matter of indisputable record that he lived peaceably and graciously and very generously with his friends and with his neighbors, and he used only words, no violence ever, on any kind, in all the years of his verbal battles with the authorities. Is this here today a mute and eloquent evidence that tyrants did come? If he has done things which you do not agree with, or if he believed things which you do not agree with, would you not forgive him now? Would you not forgive his family? If this man must be buried in infamy, perhaps I am, and sir, perhaps you are, partially to blame for being too uninvolved in... Let me read that again. Would you not forgive this family? If this man must be buried in infamy, perhaps I am, and sir, perhaps you are, partially to blame for being too uninvolved in seeking to rectify some of our evils. Maybe this is a good day for all of us to search our hearts and to pray for our country and really work for its betterment. Maybe the whole tragedy of 4 dead and 5 in custody need not be in vain. May God help us that it be not in vain. Amen. A few days later, Gordon's grandson was born. Yori and Janice named him Gordon Wendell Kahl II. Reckon he'll be a good shot? His forebears did hail from defiance, you know. We'll use words for ammunition and keep shooting at those who would destroy the Constitution. We can't afford to miss. Goodbye, Grandpa. I loved you. Goodbye, Grandpa. I loved you, and I missed you so much. When you last left North Dakota, you did not know what the future held, but you did know him well, who held the future. Some Christians are so distant in their walk with God that he must yell at them and even chastise them. Others, like you, walk so closely that you could hear his heartbeat and be sensitive to the soft and gentle whisper of his will. That's what I want to do, Grandpa. I want to walk so close to him each day that whoever looks at me will see Christ. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I wondered why you had to die. I think I have figured that out. You, like Jesus, died so that others can be free. Bitterness only destroys us. We must forgive those who did it, because they knew not what they did. I'll see you in heaven. The end. Personal commentary from Rudy regarding forgiveness, Luke 17:3. On page 236 and 237 is a song. It appears to be written by Capstan Turner, and I'm just going to read it. I'll post the music for those later. It's called The Ballad of Gordon Kahl. There was a man who had no guile. His name was Gordon Kahl. He came from out in prairie land. Now Kahl was quite a man. He spat into a cobra's eye. He held it in his hand. He fought a war up in the sky. Now Kahl was quite a man. He loved, he preached, he shot, he prayed. I'll do the best I can. And then the marshals came that day. Now Kahl was quite a man. Dakota down to Arkansas, he's known throughout the land, the martyred champion of his cause. Now Kahl was quite a man. We have reached the last page of this book, and I am going to remind you, if you stuck it out this long, that Yori von Kahl and Scott Fall, who were two men of the highest integrity, still sit in federal prison after 37 years. I encourage you to write them a letter and let them know that you love them and have not abandoned them, and that we have not forgotten about them, and that one day God will set them free for the remainder of their whatever life they have left to live. Thank you for sticking with us this long. God bless.